Happy Wednesday, church family, and welcome to this week's edition of This Past Sunday. Now, this past Sunday, we returned to our Timothy series. This time, we were in Second Timothy, and we saw that Paul is now it's quite in a different place than when he wrote his first letter to Timothy. So, Paul has been arrested, he's imprisoned, he's cold, he's damp, he's lonely, and he knows that he's not likely to leave the prison alive. In essence, Paul knows that he is soon to die. So he writes to his friend Timothy. The message from Paul this last Sunday focused on Paul encouraging Timothy to both remember the resurrection and to not let his relationship with Jesus Christ fade. Rather, Timothy is encouraged to daily seek to grow and develop that relationship. Now, we ended last Sunday with a challenge to spend at least 30 seconds every day with Jesus. A word of prayer in the morning or a time of reflection midday. And I truly hope that you've been embracing that challenge. Maybe 30 seconds is not enough for you. You said, Steve, that's way too short. For me, it's a minimum of 10, 15 minutes, maybe more. And that's great if you're at that place. But if you've not yet decided to give it a go, I would encourage you to do so. There are real benefits, both physical and mental, that come from spending time with Jesus. Now, this week, we continue in our study of Second Timothy. Our focus verses are going to be 2 Timothy chapter 3, starting in verse 14, and we're going to go through chapter 4, verse 5. In these verses, Paul encourages us to ground ourselves in Scripture, as we've been doing, to open our Bibles and actually read the words, to meditate on them, and to use them as a tool for equipping. And this is so important because Paul has a mandate for Timothy and for us that without a strong grounding in Scripture is going to be impossible to do. Now, this mandate, which we find in chapter 4, verses 1 and 2, is of immense importance to Paul. As you read these verses, note the language Paul uses in verse 1. We've seen a range of emotions from Paul. We've seen Paul in a very encouraging, happy mood. We've seen Paul in a more somber mood. Here, these words clearly indicate that Paul is extremely serious. But we could ask, why is Paul using such a serious tone and such serious words here? Well, part of that answer is because of what he notes in verses 3 and 4. As you read verses 3 and 4, you may very well say to yourself, well, hold on, is Paul talking about right now? Is he talking about what's going on in the world today or in some of our churches today? Well, the truth is that we deal with many of the same issues today as Timothy was dealing with 2,000 years ago. And Paul's words are just as important for us today and for our congregation as it was for Timothy and the congregation in Ephesus. Now, there's a lot here, and we're going to discuss it in more detail this next Sunday. I hope to see you then, and until then, God bless.